a good question. I think there's a lot of different things that you can do as a leader. One thing I will say first is recognize that they are people going through the change, and meeting them where they are, I think, is one of the most important things. Whether they are leaders within your team or frontline staff or leaders of leaders, each of them needs something different. And being able to meet them where they are, but then give them some nuggets, some tools that they can take with them and apply, whether it's in their day-to-day or within their teams, I think is really important. Another thing I think is important is being able to provide that North Star for them, so the direction. It's not that you have to have it all figured out, but generally it's kind of setting the tone for how they can operate and move forward through the change and letting them know that you're in it with them. Knowing your team or knowing your audience. Maybe these are folks that aren't necessarily reporting directly to you or part of your team, but learning your audience. I think being able to pivot in real time and understanding the people in the room. Some people are slower processors. Some people can think on their feet, but being able to recognize that diversity in the room and how people come to the table is really important. And being a facilitator. So facilitation is actually really hard sometimes when you're trying to build collaboration or get folks to come together that maybe don't traditionally. Within their own teams, sometimes it's even hard there too, because you have the folks who are comfortable speaking out in that group, and then you have folks that aren't, and maybe they're kind of more behind the scenes. They like to go to their leader. So to be able to bring folks together in a conversation, whether they're in the same team or not, means that you have to be a really good facilitator, and you have to quickly identify the personalities in the room and how you need to balance those. So spending time to understand that and how to read people, I think if you have the opportunity, kind of depending on the scenario, to build trust with those folks ahead of time and letting them know that it's okay to speak up and it's okay if their idea isn't perfect. It's more about how we come together as a team and what we build together, because it's one of those things where there's momentum, right? Somebody will give an idea, somebody will say something, and then that snowball happens and folks start to build off of each other. And when that momentum picks up, then you see the real collaboration happen and you see those walls breaking down. But it takes time to build that up, especially when you have folks that are used to being in their silos. So I think as a leader, the more time you spend building those relationships and making it okay for people to voice their opinions or to share ideas, but then the more time you bring people together and letting them know that their ideas or the things that they have to contribute are valued, I think goes a really long way in the long term. So at DCY, or the Ohio Department of Children and Youth, we are very data-driven, and I would say not all of those are necessarily technology related. Sometimes it's just how we maximize our programs. So as an example, we have foster kiddos in our system, and then we also have a program that we support in the state of Ohio called Imagination Library. It's part of the Dolly Parton program, and so we were able to identify the opportunity to match up the kiddos under the age of 5 and those that haven't been registered for the Dolly Parton program so that they get a book every month, which is a huge thing for that kiddo that's in a foster home and that's moving around. Every month we go in and update those addresses if they shift, but they have something to rely on. So sometimes it's something that simple that isn't necessarily a brand new technology, but has a big external impact. But then other times it's something that does have a technology-driven impact and solution. And so, for example, we are in the process of actually implementing a solution to be able to reach Ohioans in a more impactful way. One of the examples that I like to share is essentially a new mom. So one of our big agency goals is around reducing infant mortality. So the Safe Sleep program is a part of that, and we are looking at identifying new moms that are coming to the system and how to push information out to them around safe sleep and anything else that they might not know or think about as far as being a factor in their child's vitality. And things like that can have real world, real life-saving impact. And so there's a lot of opportunities across our organization to leverage the data for that. Another one has to do with the early education, so pre-K. That is actually one of the most fascinating areas because it's the most data-driven outcomes that I've seen in our agency, and that a kiddo that is ready for kindergarten, so they pass their kindergarten readiness assessment, that outcome directly correlates with the success that they have in 3rd grade, which directly correlates with the success of them graduating high school and moving on to continued education. And to know that that data is tried and true, and then build programs around that and how we reach and educate Ohioans, making sure their kiddos are set up for kindergarten, makes a big difference. So at DCY, we're in an interesting scenario where we're building a new agency, but we're also continuing with programs that exist. So it's kind of like a merger and a startup, and that we pulled the people and the programs and technology from other state agencies into our own to serve all those programs supporting 0 to 21 plus the family, moms and dads around that. So we're transitioning, and I like to say we're kind of restructuring, we're building skyscrapers, and we're building the foundation at the same time. All of those things are happening. So it's really important that we spend time on the operational technology solutions and getting those folks like HR and contracts and fiscal and even IT up and running with systems that they need, while we're focusing also on implementing the governor's objectives around, as well as the other things like the rules that are being legislated. We have a very short window to implement those from a technology perspective. So there's a pretty big balancing act between the two. And we have to do that by looking at things like deadlines, some things you just can't get away from when it comes to when they have to be implemented, budget, and kind of where that budget falls across the fiscal years, the people aspect. And also, are there quick wins? So maybe we can't implement a full solution today, but we can get some quick wins and get creative with how we problem solve so that we have a positive impact on those internal internal operational units, as well as external facing. So lastly, I would say it's also getting creative with the resources. I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. So we have our staff, we have a team, but there's so much capacity that they have in a day. So it's also leveraging staff aug, vendor partners, among other resources to help us get stuff done. So this is a hot topic, of course, right? Across all technology conversations is AI and other emerging solutions. We are actually looking to leverage it more. So we do have some AI. We're not leveraging machine learning today, but at the state of Ohio, there's a really great governance framework around that. And there's a lot of state agencies that are taking advantage of that. We are looking to do that more within our organization. So we're standing up the technology, the infrastructure to do that, and leveraging that a lot in our help desk space. So I think there's other areas though that we can do that. We've talked about even things like training. So being able to, there's a lot of cool tools out actually. So being able to take long drawn out process documentations or rule documentations that might be 20 pages long and leverage tools that actually put that into a consumable fashion, like a podcast or like a chat bot that's able, the whole Q&A thing, right? And the machine learning around that and seeing what our customers need. So we are looking at that. But of course, we have to be mindful of not using it in a way that impacts the outcome of somebody's well-being, right? So the services that we offer. And so we're looking at those use cases and how it can be most impactful. I think there's no doubt that it's necessary. And I think if you don't plan to leverage it, you're behind the 8 ball. But it's just a matter of how you leverage it and the use cases that you identify for maybe some of those quick wins where you can build some trust around it within your organization and even give your team time to learn how to support that and the skill sets around that, and then build upon from there. So I have had a few vendors that I would say are definitely up there from a partnership perspective. And it was really the ones that took time and talked with me about things that had nothing to do with what they were offering or nothing to do with what their, statement of work was for and the things that we contracted them for. It might be something totally unrelated, but the fact that they were just invested, I think that's where it really matters. I mean, there's always terms, right, and things you have to be cognizant of, especially in the public sector. There's a lot of checks and balances when it comes to vendor partners, but I think that genuinely a lot of people want to get behind service. Right? They want to serve Ohioans or whatever state that they're in. And so there's a desire there. And I think when they come to the table with ideas, even things that doesn't necessarily create another statement of work for them, that builds trust and, in my opinion, leads to that partnership a lot more. The thing I enjoyed the most about today's event is really some of the diversity of conversation. So there were some folks that came from other states even actually today and shared Also though, some of the things that you wouldn't really think about technology being used in, like the Metro Parks area, I thought that was extremely fascinating, and it actually gave me ideas on how we could use some of that in our own space. So I think it's just how the information, and sometimes it's just the way people say it, right? You hear it in a different context and it piques your interest in a different way, and a way that you can apply it where you work. And I think it's really good for us to be educated on what's going on around us. Even if it doesn't fit the exact same way, it's just enough to pique your curiosity so that you can then take that back and do with it however you may.